Sun Coast.
Spark, I call you healer. You can mend any broken heart. I call you faithful Father. You finish everything you start. My soul was made to respawn. I know you by 1,000 names, and you deserve every single one. Given me a million ways to be amazed at what you've done. I am lost in wonder at all you do. I know you by 1,000 names, and I'll sing them back to you. Yeah, I sing them on back. Your love is boundless, beyond what I could dream. Your grace is patient, 'cause you're never giving up on me. Well, I call you bondage breaker, 'cause you're handing out the prison keys. My soul is made, yeah, to be free. I know you by 1,000 names, and you deserve every single one. You've given me a million ways to be amazed at what you've done. I am lost in wonder at all you do. I know you by 1,000 names, and I sing back to you. I sing them all back. I sing them all back. Sing them all back. You are rock of ages, you great I am. You are King forever, the beginning and the end. And you are Lord and servant. You're the Son of Man. You're the Lion of Judah. You're the risen Lamb. You're the second Adam, here to lead us home. You are Yahweh's glory now, revealed in flesh and bone. You are ocean
my home, walking this tightrope after your heart.
So, Ghost, how we feeling this morning? Would you guys join me in singing this out? Isn't it just like heaven when you walk into the room? There's not a thing that's hidden when every eye is on you. Can't get enough of your presence. It's the perfect point of view. Isn't it just like heaven? Come
stay the path. Somewhere in between the promise and the place it comes to pass. Who knows what it'll cost me or how long it'll last. But I told you I would follow and I'll never take it back. I'll hang on every word you ever said, for I know you're faithful, and I'm still waiting on a well
the joy in every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. And the joy in every battle, know that's where you'll be. I count the joy, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Come on, Sunkos, let me hear you one more time. Thank y'all so much for singing out with us. You may be seated.
What happens in a person's heart and soul when they make that move from very skeptical or suspicious about giving to an organization like ours, and then they do it and they see the impact?
One of the things I've noticed throughout my life is that people sometimes will give to get. You know, I want God, I'll give you this if you give me this. Mm-hmm. So we get this barter relationship with God. I will do this if you do that. Or God, but when you give things or you get things and you give them away, when your heart is so full that I'm not into just receiving, I'm into giving. Those who've discovered the gift of giving, it seems like their jar of oil is always full of oil. So the people who are the most generous have the most generous things happen to them. Well, this guy's really generous. I'm going to buy him a meal. I'll buy him a car. Yeah. I'll buy him a trip. And all of a sudden, all these great things happen to these people who are benevolent. So the mindset, the error mindset is, well, I'm going to do this, so this will happen to me. That's backward. You give it as if you're never going to get anything back from it. And because that becomes your heart, be ready. Because I think that as long as you're giving away, there's going to be provision that finds its way into your life so that you can continue to do what you need to do. Good morning. It's good to see you today. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Larry Baucom, and this is Troy Doucet. And we're here as your teaching pastors to tell you a little bit about what's coming up at prescription week number 6. But before I do, let me remind you some things happening. In your notes, you have some information on the back of the sermon notes. There is what's happening. And let me just remind you of a few things that are happening. One is the Suncoast Tour. Years ago, what we discovered is that people attend church a lot and they want to be more involved and they don't know how. So we created a tour that basically invite you to a tour where you can go to this. It's at 10 o'clock next week. So if you come to the 9 o'clock service, then you can hit the tour after that. But it's about a 45-minute tour led by Susan Hickman, whom we call the queen of everything at Suncoast. And she does so much for us, but she tells you the history. She drives you on our big high-top van all around the campus. It's got a big TV in it, and there's a lot of stuff our creative team have made, but gives you an insight where the church has come from, where we're going, what we're about, and also takes you behind the scenes in children's ministry. What you don't know is how many adults and children are over in the other wing. Or on the other side of campus, you don't see the middle schooler that's happening over there and the high schoolers helping. That's on that side. We say that's kind of a dysfunctional part of our campus. But then they say it's up here. So we don't know who's right, maybe a little bit of both. But anyways, if you're interested in the tour, take your piece of paper that you have that has a little tear off on it, put your name on it, write your name, say tour, next week at 10 o'clock, and you just show up. They take you on a tour all around the campus. They give you a free breakfast, and they talk about all the things that Suncoast is. Now, what else? They also show you all the volunteer opportunities. So you want to be more involved? You want to greet? You want to do something? Be a part of a teaching area, be a part of the coffee bar area. There's so many different areas that you can volunteer. They give you a list. There's no obligation. You can do as little or as much as you want. But if you want to be more involved, the Suncoast Tour. That makes sense? It's the missing link that most churches do not have. We've discovered that. We think it works very well. Also, in a couple weeks, on Wednesday, May 31st, is Encore. So I'll let you know, those of you who love music, it's all music here on Wednesday night, starting at 7 o'clock. It's in your notes as well. And then some people were asking about baptism. And on the 4th, which is in a couple weeks, we're going to do a baptism at 6 o'clock at Siesta Beach. Keep posted at the lifeguard stand, the farthest south one. Is it yellow?
Yellow.
I'm not very good with my colors. But yellow lifeguard stand will have the beach baptism at 6 o'clock on that Sunday afternoon. So those are some of the things happening in the life of church. And if you look through that, we'd appreciate that. But today we're talking about hate well. And we're going to go through this, but let's summarize where we've been up to this point. And I'll start. First thing is, first week, prescription number 1, dig it up. What that means is if there's things in your life that you've buried, not the negative, but if you really want to process the negative, you need to dig that up too. But all the positive gifts that you have. We use the parable of the guy that had got 5 talents, then 2 talents, and 1 talent. The person with 1, they didn't take any risk at all. They just buried what they had and they didn't use it. And the moral of the story is if you have gifts and abilities, don't ignore them. Dig them up, give them to God, let them live. We think that's an important part.
Absolutely.
Then the second week, you taught us. What
Yeah,
did you have to
I
say?
taught on this concept, this practical prescription of pull the tooth. How many guys ever had a toothache in here? It's the worst pain in the world. And when you have a toxic tooth in your mouth, the easiest thing to do is just to pull it. So whenever you have toxic relationships or toxic things happening in your life, maybe bad habits that are toxic, the main thing we need to do is focus on pulling that tooth and making space for God to do something new. And we also use the analogy of a young child who has a loose tooth, right? They pull the tooth, not because it's causing any pain, but because it's standing in the way of something new and more mature to grow in its place. That was week 2. Then on week 3, I preached about play the movie. I love movies. I'm an avid movie watcher. And there's sometimes a movie will end in a way that I wasn't very happy about. I would have wrote the script a little bit different. But yet, you are the star in your own life's movie, so to speak. And if you're not liking the way your life is trajecting, if you don't like the way the end is seeming to be forming, then you have the power with Christ in you to change your movie script. God gives you that ability to do that when you trust Him. And so that was part of Play the Movie.
Yep, and the next week we talked about do something. That part of life is not just reacting to circumstances, but be proactive. When you see something that needs to be done, take the initiative, do something. Now, not everything in life is that something happens to you and you react. Some things you plan in your life, I'm gonna be a better, and you begin to do something along those areas. Then the next week, we talked about act like an ant. That was just last week. The big joke is, I was telling my grandkids this, what are you talking about, Pop? And I said, act like an ant, not an uncle. And they go, what do you mean? Acting like an ant does things methodically. I mean, life is compiled of many small steps. You can't get where you want to go no matter what your goals are. You can't get there in one step. You take small steps and incrementally keep doing the right thing. And we talked about this a year or two ago. Do the next right thing.
Yep.
Acting like an ant, simply doing the next right thing every day. And that compilation takes you to a level of maturity that you'll never get all at once.
That's right.
And today, we're talking about hating well. So let's start with Scripture.
Yes.
Would you read that for us, and then we'll jump in.
So this week's topic, hate well, comes from Romans 12, verses 9 through 13. And here's what Paul writes. He says, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, but cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality.
That's a great scripture.
Yes.
So let me begin with asking the question, what comes to your mind when I say the word hate?
My immediate reaction, I think like many of you in here, we've been taught hate is like a bad word. Like it's something I shouldn't feel about someone or something. A lot of times when I feel that sensation of hate, I want to feel guilty about it or shameful that it's actually within me. But I think today's purpose is we're going to show that hate is actually a part of who we are as humans.
But it comes from so much negativity, too much destruction, because we hear in the media hate, and what follows that is not usually good.
That's right.
Hate crimes, you've heard
Yep.
that expression. And usually hate is something that's totally negative, and it's tied to destruction and evil. And we think of hate as a problem, and it is in some ways. I mean, I use the word hate. Usually, these are some of the things I hate. I hate diets. Do anybody, but here's the thing, we're all on a diet. No matter what your diet is, it's your diet. So I hate diets that restrict a lot of food intake. But if you hate diets and exercise, I hate exercise. So let me ask, how many of you exercise regularly? That's good. I exercise regularly and have my entire life. It doesn't mean I love it,
That's right.
but I do it because I think it's important. So do you ever exercise?
No, I
don't
hate
look
it.
like
I
it.
hate.
I I wear these long sleeves just to make them feel good. So, yeah, it's like a loaf of fresh bread.
He's packing.
It's Wonder Bread.
I think that's the tension, though, right? I mean, I had a guy after service. He came up to me and he was like, "How much do you bench? Do you like bench pressing?" I was like, "I hate working out. Like, I absolutely hate it. I hate cardio. I hate diets, but I hate being out of shape more than I hate doing those things." And so I think that's the tension of hate in our life, is that normally the things we do that we hate is because there's something that we hate more that drives us for that. Yeah. So it's kind of a paradox.
Becky and I ride our bikes in our neighborhood about 45 minutes, several days a week, sometimes as much as 5 days, and sit in the sauna for half an hour. Now, if anybody ever sits in a 150-degree sauna for 30 minutes and tells me, "Oh, I love it," I go, "They're lying." No. So I sit in there 5 to 6 days a week, 150 degrees, and do I like it? No. I hate it.
That's right.
But I think health, I do it for health reasons.
That's right.
I try to eat a balanced diet for health reasons. I work out for health reasons because I want to be more balanced in my life. And you do these things because it's good for you. And sometimes, hate is probably a strong word, but we try to make it positive. So when is hate positive?
I think it's positive when it says something about our values. So like if I say something like, "I hate dishonesty," it's the fact that I value honesty. If I say I hate child abuse, it's because I value children. If I hate murder, it's because I value life. Or in other ways, I hate gossiping because I value truth speaking. And you have an example of standing up and hating gossip in a particular way.
Yeah, many years ago, I was in San Diego on a pastor's conference, and I was on these large church conferences for years before I started Suncoast. And I was in San Diego, and just on a bus with about 30 or 40 pastors, and all of a sudden, I was behind some guys that were having a conversation, and they're having a conversation about a pastor that had just resigned from a church in Indianapolis. And they were saying, the guy ran the church down. He should have never gone there. We don't know what's doing, but he wasn't doing some ethical issues. And what they didn't know was this guy was one of my very best friends. And I had been on the phone with him repeatedly talking about what was going. And I was part of his whole resignation process because I was like, "Man, that's toxic. You need to get out of there and do what's right." And he was trying to do what's right, but these guys were running him down. And after I listened to it for a while, I said, "Hey guys, excuse me, just a minute. Let me interrupt your conversation." I said, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, "I want you to know the guy you're talking about is one of my best friends. You don't know what you're talking about, and I'm offended by this slander and this gossip, and it needs to stop." I got up and walked down the aisle off the bus, and this guy walked behind me by the name of Joe. He's the guy that I stayed with, and he walked behind me and he kind of patted me on the shoulder as we were walking along, and I was, I was a little bit still pumped from that confrontation because you have to get pumped up a little bit. And he walked up, he said, "Well, I can tell you right now," he's a Southern guy, "Well, I can tell you right now what I'm really proud of." So what's that? He said, "That I'm a friend of Larry Baucom." And I go, "Why is that?" He said, "Because no one will ever say anything bad about me if you're around."
That's right.
So I can tell you all the bad things about him. I'm allowed. So I can gossip about my friends. But I mean, sometimes I don't like gossip. I don't like it when people are slandered. I hate it when people are being judged. That's why one of our values are, we're a hospital, not a courtroom. Yeah. Judging people, sometimes we don't have the information, but it's just easier to condemn. It's easier to come up with an excuse of why people act the way they do. And I think I hate that because I've seen it a lot in my life. Does that mean I've never gossiped? When I do, I hate it about me. And we all slip into sometimes saying something we shouldn't say. And I have this reset filter in my life. In my quiet time, which I like to take frequently, it seems like when I get quiet before God, I begin to replay the events of my life. And sometimes I go, that was not the best Larry Baucom right there. And I want to do better tomorrow. And my life is just one of continued trying to evaluate and become a better person. Yeah. And I think but hate is part of that. I hate it when I'm not at my best. I hate it when I'm not kind. I hate it when I'm not the best husband or father or pastor. Or I hate it when I'm not the best driver, but it's not my fault. It's you.
That's right.
Anyway, but people, I don't like it when I mean, I say this honestly. I told you this before, that in my neighborhood, I was driving recently, and this Muskogee duck walked in front of my car, and I was looking away in that moment, and I thought he would stop. The next thing I heard this boom, 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 boom. I thought, oh no, I killed this duck. And I look out, and I just rolled him over under the car, and he was walking. Afterwards, I thought, he's going to be fine. And I thought, well, I could tell my congregation that your pastor flipped the bird this week. So that's about the most they ever come. I'm not a guy who gives people the finger. I just never have. And but here's the thing. I may not give them the finger on the outside, but there's been more than once that inside I'm giving them the finger. Fair enough? But that's not my best version of me.
That's right.
I've been able to control the external response. What I want to do is let the Spirit of Christ get in me and give them the benefit of the doubt even before I get there. I've not arrived at that yet. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the Apostle Paul arrived there either.
No.
But he strains and strives to being the best version of ourselves that we can be.
Yes.
So gossip, I'm not a fan. I don't like it. I wish it would stop. But at the same time, when I get angry with people who gossip, hating and anger are kind of different things.
That's right.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I think, if I'm being honest, I think hate is a gift. It's a gift from God when it's used well. And I have a saying, I say, you can only truly hate well if you know how to love well. And it's one of those things that if hate is part of our being, part of what makes us and constitutes us as a human, then we have to really learn and study and pray to hate well. Because even though we hate the word hate, it's still around. And even children, I don't let my children say things like, I hate broccoli, or I hate going to bed on time, or I hate school. I try to negotiate that language with them, but I understand what they're saying, that hate is something that we have to understand in order to do it the proper way. I think the way in which God would glorify God in that. So
I agree. And we all could be guilty of saying, oh, I hate this humidity, or I hate school. Little kids, guess what? There's only one more week. And they're out. I love the sign at the school that says, parents, tag, you're it. For the summer, you get your own kids back. And but their kids say, I hate school, I hate peas, I hate broccoli, I hate my sister, I hate my life. And as parents, we try to help them negotiate what that really means. Right. And some things we don't like that make us uncomfortable, but hate is an interesting word. But let's move to point number 1 in your notes. Fill in the blank if you want.
Yeah, so point number 1, if you're taking notes, is this. Hating well acts like your body's immune system. Paul writes in Romans, the verse we just read, it said, hate what is evil. That word hate there is really, it's a beautiful Greek word. It literally means to cause separation, to sort of separate yourself from what is evil. And again, we think of evil and how easy it is to hate evil, whether it comes in the form of certain systems, whether it comes in the form of certain policies that oppress people. But evil, when you do a study of this word, it's almost as though evil, the way that the Greek uses this word, evil is a deprivation of what is supposed to be good. And you talked earlier in the first service, things like pornography, right? Is a perversion of something that is really good, that God created to be good. And that's really what Paul is calling for. But in Proverbs, listen to what the Proverbs writer says in Proverbs 6. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are too quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a man who stirs up dissension among his brothers. It's almost as though the word hate is used over and over in the Bible as a way to describe how we as followers of Christ should react to evil in the world. And hating is like the first point, the immune system. When you have an infection in your body responds, right? You have certain symptoms, whether it's a fever, a cough, a cold sweat. And what your body's doing that you can't see, it's trying to send antibodies to the problem place in order that these antibodies can fix it, contain it, and then remove it, eradicate it from your system. And if we think of hate in that way, then what hate is, hate is our power to protect what is good in our life. Hate can help us push away from the things that are evil. And hate causes us I know for me and my love for my children, hate is that which propels me to protect the things that I value most in my life. And that's how your immune system works. You know, when we do radiation treatment for cancer, cancer is a living cell, right? It's a living dysfunction of the cell. I don't know anyone in here who goes, the poor cancer cells, we care about them too. They're alive too. No, we're like, get this out of my body, however, right? Even though it is part of you, we know that that is not a healthy part of your system.
Yeah.
And so we don't feel bad for the cancer cells. We want to eradicate it, remove it, and get healthy again.
Whether it's cancer, or how many had COVID in the last few years? Just if you had COVID, raise your hand. Huge majority of you had COVID. And one of the things that the body does, sends antibodies. I mean, we want to isolate that. Your body begins to work against it. And then we become immune, which means we get more antibodies. So our bodies are stronger. We get COVID, more antibodies come in and get rid of it quicker. And that really is very similar to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are things in our lives that, you know, that's not right. Maybe it's evil thoughts, or it's some kind of reaction to something, and we don't like that about us. When we marginalize people, I hate it when I say anything to anyone that really, you know, takes them down or hurts them. You know, we need to protect people as much as we can. We do that because the Spirit of Christ is in us, and it's the one that keeps coming to us and saying, that's not who you are. You can be a better person than that. And our thoughts and hearts are evolving to become more loving people as we get older.
That's right.
So I think that's important. But anyways, let's go to number 2.
Point number 2, it says this: how we hate is an important aspect of hating well. You know, Dr. Baucom, I think what we hate is important. But even more important is how we go about manifesting that hate. Because I think if you're going to hate what is evil in the world, your hate should be directed at solving the problem instead of creating a new one. And you've had the honor of sitting in some lectures to understand like the history of like Nazism in Germany and where their hate was misdirected in that.
Yeah, Adolf Hitler was, after World War I, the Socialist National Party. He came into power into a country that inflation was out of control. Values were going down. Unemployment was in double digits, way high. People couldn't get jobs. They were losing money. They were losing their houses. They were losing their businesses. And during that Germany, between World War I and World War II, I mean, this young leader came to place and said, this is not right. We want a better country. We want to do what we can to get out of this. And people were so damaged that they listened to this leader. And part of this was actually pretty healthy at the beginning.
That's right.
And then it got distorted. So they began to say, well, the problem is not just that we're losing our houses, but there's a certain elitist class that run the banking, and they have the money, and it's those people that are keeping us from getting jobs. It's those people who are taking our houses away from us and our businesses and our money. It's those people. We took loans, we can't pay them back, and they're taking everything. Maybe the problem is not the economy. Maybe the problem is those people, and they begin to blame a certain class of people.
That's right.
And the business class, the merchants, those bankers in the world at that time, high 90% were all Jewish. And they began to say the problem is not just our economy. The problem is it's their fault. It's the Jews' fault. And they began to try to eradicate the problems. So if you owe somebody money and rather than pay it back, they took your house, you come and get your house back and you kill off those people, or you send them to concentration camps. And all this happened. One of the great heinous crimes and evil things in the last 100 years has been the attempt at exterminating the Jewish people. We think that's is inappropriate. It started right, and it doesn't represent all of Germany. I don't want to insult any Germans who are here today because they're good people, but I think that part of history teaches us some things about that, and we need to learn from those things, learn from our mistakes, and help things become better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we should hate systems, and it's okay to hate a system.
Yes.
But it's a problem. We say, but I'm going to focus that on a person. Here's the way it starts.
That's right.
All of a sudden, you and I disagree about something.
Yes.
You believe this, I believe that. Doesn't matter what it is. Well, you believe differently. And rather than me respecting our differences, maybe that's the way it starts. But then all of a sudden, as I begin to think about it, I think I'm right, and he really is wrong. And then I begin to change and go, not only is he wrong, but if he keeps perpetuating this negative belief, he's going to do damage to somebody. Therefore, then not only you're wrong, now I think you're going to do damage. Then I say, he is evil. And then I move to the next part. I need to exterminate him because he's different from me. And that's a very typical process in our society. We disagree, the disagree grows, and it smolders, it becomes hatred, and then it tries to become extermination.
Right.
It's true not only in life of cultures and society, it's also been true in the life of the church. From 300 to 450 AD, the church had that same issue. They had big divisions between the East and the Western church, and they tried to snuff each other out. And that some of the stuff is horrific, but we learned from this, and we said, this is not who we are.
That's it.
It's not who we want to be.
I think hating well and that wonderful illustration of what the Germans were unable to do was differentiate between the policies that caused harm and the people who may have enacted those policies. And to hate well means that I'm not using hate as a mechanism to retaliate or to take revenge. That's a good test that if you hate something, a system or some sort of policy that's in place, who is your hate directed at? That policy or the people? Because I go back to what you said a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Baucom. We have to always be kind because sometimes people are blind.
Right.
So hate well means not using that gift as a form of retaliation or retribution or revenge.
Yeah, and it's something called subjective hate versus objective hate. Subjective hate is when it all feeds inside of me, and it just keeps growing and it just keeps winding up, and all of a sudden I get angry, and that emotion mixed with that, and I lash out. That's not hating well. Have you ever noticed that it's easy to get frustrated with an inanimate object? I remember I have one of these lift gates on the back of my Honda, and it lifts up, and sometimes it doesn't go high enough, or it's a little bit, and I bump my head on it. You know, I say, stupid gate. See, it's easy to be, I look at that stupid, of course, my grandkids, oh, Pop, you can't say the word stupid, sorry. But we blame something. We run into something, and we blame it. And at some point now, as I'm a little older and my head's got more dings in it, it seems like I go, it was not the gate, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
But what's problematic is when I turn my attention to human beings rather than the system. I mean, I don't want to get into other things, but there's so many different systems in place in our society, in our government, in the church world, and it's easier to say, I have a problem with the system and still love the people.
That's right.
And that's okay, but it shouldn't just drive me to this anger and this fury. And we are in a country today, there's a lot of this going on. And I think we're not hating well.
Yeah.
We've misplaced our hate. It's too personal, it's too judgmental, it's too damning. And maybe, just maybe, what our country needs is another dose of the Spirit of Christ where we get along a little better and we begin to be peacemakers.
Yeah.
And we can be kind because they are blind. And we can love people that may not agree with us at all. So that's the challenge today.
That's it. I think the idea of like what Dr. Baucom is talking about, this idea of subjective hate, you know, I know within me, I have these feelings that rile up. Someone cuts me off in traffic, you know, and I'm flipping the bird on the inside. But how many guys ever do this? It's not enough to just get angry. Some of us like will speed up to actually look that person in the face from across the car. Anybody ever did this? You're like, and you're like, who is this idiot?
And you want to have a Suncoast sticker.
That's right, that's right, that's right. But that's that idea of subjective hate. But when you have objective hate, it goes back to this idea like we want to be problem solvers. So like Rosa Parks, what was it, December 1st, 1955, James Blake, the bus driver, tells this African-American woman, get up and give your seat to this white man. And this hate, not of people, but of the oppressive system rose up in her, and she refused to move. And she became what we call the modern day woman of the civil rights movement. That's an idea of objective hate that is attempting to solve a problem, not by retaliation or revenge or fighting evil with evil, but by standing up for what is right and hating what is wrong, that is in the form of policy and principles and not people or persons.
Yeah, I think we hate well when we go hard on the issue,
Yes.
but soft on the person. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm not in that camp, but I'm in this human camp. As parents and grandparents, sometimes we see our kids and grandkids do things that maybe they could do better. But we usually come across a little softer because we understand them better. There's a little more, oh, I understand why you act this way. You didn't get your nap. At least that's what they tell me today. He's acting that way because he didn't get his nap. But it seems like if we just be kinder, I mean, I think that's a good point. When we're kinder, less judgmental,
Yes.
more caring, I think it's okay to say, I'm opposed to a lot of things in the world. I'm opposed to any group of people that's marginalized or oppressed, whether it's sexual preference or whether it's race or whether it's, honestly, political preference or whatever camp they're in. It's not this anger, this polarization that keeps happening. I think the Spirit of God in us teaches us, I need to be kind to people. I need to react in a way that would bring honor to the Spirit of Christ that's in me. And if there's anything I think our country needs, it's that.
Yep.
And I think we need to be people of hope, people of love, people who decide, I don't have to agree with everything, but I need to love people all around me. And I think that's the
beautiful.
object of hate.
I think we hate well again is when to hate well means I'm not going to make this personal. I could still react to the evil in these policies, these principles, these doctrines, these creeds, these teachings, but still refuse to make it personal. And that's what I've learned from you, Dr. Baucom, and being employed here, has been we have very distinct differences in our theology between lots of churches in our community. But what has been amazing to see is that we refuse to make it personal, to lash out against a denomination or a pastor. We simply say, here's what Suncoast is good at. We're good at loving people when they least expect it and when they least deserve it. And that's what we're going to focus on. And that's how we sort of hate these theologies that may oppress people that have a particular preference, sexual orientation, political movement, whatever. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of that. Yeah. We do that day in and day out here.
There's Father Richard Rohr, Catholic priest, says it this way. He says, the best criticism of the bad is the practice of the better. It's not about criticizing them, but it's simply to love in a better way. I remember years ago when I was in Kansas City, I was a student going through graduate school, and Becky and I were married, and I worked at an apartment complex called about 300 apartments, and I would fix things like mechanical things, air conditioning, disposals, dishwashers, anything could break in a house. I was a maintenance guy, I'd fix those things. And my boss first was Doris. Doris was fine. Then Doris moved to a different property, and the property management company brought in Nicolette. Nicolette was a big lady, but Nicolette was not my favorite boss. As a matter of fact, the more I worked there, the more I began to realize she does not know how to do her job. She would take you off one job. You could never finish anything because you had a beeper back then. You're always getting to, leave this replacement of a garbage disposal because somebody's got a leaky faucet, or relieve that because she didn't have time to let someone in. You go let them in their apartment. And all day long, it was just chaos. You could never get anything done. And I got to where I just go, nobody can work under these conditions. I hate my job. I hated it. I used to like it, but I hated it. And one day, Becky and I came back from Christmas vacation in Florida. We flew back to Kansas City, and I went in, the other maintenance guy said, Larry, I got bad news and good news. I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, well, the management company fired Nicolette. They didn't feel like she's doing a good job managing. I think enough people were complaining or whatever, but she no longer worked for the company. I said, oh, that's terrible, to lose your job and that kind of stuff. I said, what's the good news? He said, Nicolette got fired. I mean, it's the same comment either way. But we never really attacked her for that, realizing, that was something that's a bad choice. I hated my job, but I never hated Nicolette. She did the best she could with what she had. And it wasn't in her skill set. But we just kind of tread water and just keep going. But right. I think that it's important for us to understand that people sometimes are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
We just need to give them that opportunity. So that's good news and bad news type of thing. So would you go through and read us the Serenity Prayer?
Absolutely. The Serenity Prayer is by a professor theologian from Germany, Reinhold Niebuhr. And I want to say this, the way we react to evil, the way we hate evil, is going to be determined by our perspective. And this is what the prayer is about. It's called the Prayer of Serenity. Listen to what it says. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking, as Christ did, the sinful world
as it is, but not as I would want it to be. Trusting that God will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen.
And that's our closing prayer. Would you stand for the closing story? It's an old story I got years ago. It's about an Ohio farmer, and a pastor went to have breakfast with these farmers. And as he said to have breakfast with them, one of the old farmers decided to say the prayer. And the pastor said, okay, all right, you're going to pray. And he said, the first thing the farmer says is, Lord, I hate buttermilk. The pastor, kind of squints one eye, go, where's this prayer going? And then he said, and Lord, while I'm at it, I hate lard. And Lord, I hate raw white flour. The pastor started to interrupt him and just say, let's do better. He said, but Lord, when you mix them all together and bake them up, I love fresh biscuits. Then he said, Lord, so when things come up that we don't like and life gets hard and we don't understand exactly what's going on, help us to just relax and realize you're just mixing it all together, and what'll come out is better than fresh biscuits. So no matter what's going on in your life this week, I want you to understand some of the stuff just needs to be mixed together with the love and grace of God. He loves you today, so do we. God bless.
God bless.
Thanks for coming.